Welcome to a brand spanking new episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lastia Cahoot and I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host on this show and in life, Glenn Sheridan. Every episode, we're joined by a special guest who inspires us to consider not only what we think, but how we think and how that thinking impacts our life experience. It's time to get this conscious conversation started as we ask today's guest, who do you think you are? Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lastia. I am your host, and once again, I am here with my co-host on this show and in life, Mahoney Honey Bunch, Glenn Sheridan.
Good morning, good day. Hello all.
And today we have another super special guest, someone that I have been looking forward to having an actual conversation with for a couple of years now, because this person I know and actually am meeting for the first time today, but we have had a few email conversations and have had the opportunity to sort of chat in the Zoom chat box during some practitioner meetings through the Global Truth Center, Los Angeles. So this individual is another connection from the Global Truth Center, Los Angeles, this super amazing community that Glenn and I are both immersed in virtually from LA, or like we're here, but they're in LA. And this person is actually, I was hoping to be in class with him this last year for this advanced consciousness studies class that I'm taking, which I have talked about pretty much every single episode we've had since September. But that did not happen. So I'm so excited that we get to have a conversation with him today. So he is one of my favorite people to see on stage when he takes over for Dr. James Mellon at the Global Truth Center. I am just taken in by his sort of charismatic chill. He's like super relaxed and calm and has this beautiful energy about him. He ends up just being able to weave in these stories and anecdotes and spirituality with a nice splash of Abraham-Hicks in there, just to kind of like get Dr. James, sort of riled up a little bit. And his demeanor and his perspective, which I have only sort of experienced from afar, have just always kind of been just really, really intriguing to me, and I've been really curious about. So I'm really excited to talk about pretty much anything that comes up today, because as you folks know, this conversation is totally organic and spontaneous. So our guest today has won 2 Emmy Awards and 2 Golden Globe Awards for his work as a writer-producer on the HBO miniseries Band of Brothers and From the Earth to the Moon. He's worked with executive producer Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg. He has sold original series pitches to the broadcast networks, worked on the writing staff of primetime drama series, and has written feature screenplays for Universal, HBO, TNT, and Playtone. He is also a teacher at UCLA Extension's Writers Program and National University's MFA program in professional screenwriting. He has also been called one of the top 10 most influential screenwriting bloggers for his Flying Wrestler site. He also has a book called The Idea, which is about to be launched into an e-course. And I know we're going to hear more about that in the conversation that's about to come. And as I sort of already mentioned, he is an Abraham-Hicks fan. He also comes from a very musical family. His wife, I think all of his kids play together. And there's just so much more to learn about this amazing individual who is here with us today. So, knowing that is just a splash in the pan, a drop in the bucket of what you are all about, Mr. Erik Bork, please tell us, who do you think you are?
I am not what I appear to be. I am more than I appear to be, and I'm more than what I think I am.
I am not what I appear to be. I am more than what I appear to be. Was that it?
And I'm not who I think I am.
And I am not who I think I am. I had to write that down because I really, really like that. It's a great way to start off the conversation. I'm just going to go with foundational beliefs, or as Dr. James likes to say, AEPs, already established premises. And this is something that we talked about in class on Thursday night once again. And once again, he asked everybody in the class what our foundational AEP, or already established premise, or what I like to call life belief, is. And so everybody offered up their beliefs, and they ranged just all over the map. And it was really amazing to hear what everybody had to say. And when I came up with mine, I thought about it for a minute and thought, yep, the one that I've been going with for the last, few months is definitely still what holds. And for me, it is, there is always more, and I am always more than. And so for me, some of what you said kind of ties into that, because the way that I see myself, and it's sort of like, there's a, this is who I know myself to be, and then there's who I think that I am. And those two, even though they can kind of come from the same place, because our minds are a filter, are a lens, translate and even extrapolate, sort of thing, that who we know ourselves to be can show up differently based on who we think we are. And so thank you for saying that I am not who I think I am, because that does then say that behind the thinking, there's just something else. There's something more. There's, and for me, I believe there's always more. There's always more to discover, to learn, to expand into, to be expanded by, to emerge as, and that no matter what's going on, no matter what I think is happening, to me, in front of me, that I'm experiencing, whatever, there's always, always, always so much more. So I feel like there's, some common ground there.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you guys for having me, and thank you for that very warm introduction. It's a very nice way to start the weekend with that. I know my answer was kind of in a negative, because it's like I'm not what I think I am. I'm more than I seem to be. I'm not what I seem to be. And it's because I can't wrap my human brain around what I really am. I don't know what I really am, really. But I've been studying spiritual material for long enough to at least intellectually believe there is a lot more going on than what I can see with my senses, perceive with my senses, or my human level thinking. That doesn't mean I'm not caught up in what I see with my senses and my human level thinking 99.9% of the time.
Mhm.
But I have this inkling of, wait a minute, that's not the whole picture. And I don't have to be led around by all of that stuff and reactive to circumstances all the time, even though I still default to doing that. I mean, I've been in this spiritual, this particular teaching that we have at the Global Truth Center, that I've studied at other centers before and through other places for 25 years, probably, or more. And yet I still find that the entrenched premises that I picked up in my childhood and so forth, and I've been to therapy as well, are still do tend to come up and be operative as defaults, unless I am consciously choosing to look beyond them. And that takes energy, effort, focus, commitment, time. And I spend some time every day doing it, but
Mhm.
I still feel very much like a neophyte and a student, despite how long I've been doing that.
Yeah, I can relate to the neophyte part of it. I mean, especially being in this class that I've been in since September, which is, I think, half ministers, and everyone in that class has been in some form of spiritual teaching, study, immersed in some kind of philosophy or philosophies, whether it's the science of mind and spirit, whether it's Abraham-Hicks, whether it's Joe Dispenza or Unity, or, there's like Buddhism, there's so much other stuff, that people are coming to the table with. But it's been like way longer than I have been, because for me, I feel like really it was sort of 5 years ago that really kind of, that was the delineating point for me, when we walked into the Center for Spiritual Living in Toronto, while we were still living in Toronto. And even though I had been there about a year or a year and a half before, when there was a different minister and I was completely different, and thought, okay, this is interesting, but it's not for me. When we walked in 5 years ago and experienced the opening meditation, then heard the opening 5-minute power talk by the practitioner of the day, and then heard Reverend Jonathan Zenz's talk, never mind live music throughout, and then finding out that every week it was a different live show as far as the music went every time. Like no two songs were the same. Maybe, a few months down the road, you might hear one or two kind of, come up again, but it was always different. That aliveness, that vitality, and what was being talked about, for me, that was the day that I just kind of realized, oh my gosh, this is what I have been not sort of waiting for, but kind of waiting for, because it woke something up in me. It activated something in me beyond inspiration, um, beyond what religion and more religion than spirituality had meant to me growing up, Ukrainian Catholic. And then at some point thinking, no, now I'm atheist. And then I'm like, well, now I'm agnostic, and I'm not really sure. But this idea that especially after being in this class now, where what we experience, like this drink that I'm drinking, this show that we're participating in right now, like seeing Glenn, seeing me, seeing Erik on screen on a computer that I can touch, that this is some reality that not only I am sort of like plunked into, but that you and Glenn and everyone watching this later is having the same experience that I'm experiencing. That's not actually what's going on, that each of us has our own reality that we are experiencing, that there is a different perspective that we're all sort of seeing through, and that behind that, like what is kind of coming through to sort of be formed as that perspective, as this experience that each of us is having individually and collectively, that it's also changing from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, that there's no actual continuity taking place, and that all of it behind is something called consciousness or energy, or some, whatever it is you want, the quantum field, whatever you want to sort of ascribe to the essence, the activity, the energetic activity of everyone and everything, that's what's happening. That's what this conversation that we keep having from week to week to week to week to week in this advanced consciousness studies class is all about. And still it's like, what is consciousness? What is even energy? What is spirit? What is source? What is it? And to try and come up with language and even symbology or metaphors to convey what that feels like for each of us, what it means for each of us, it's totally fascinating and sort of, mind aching and stretching and pulling all at the same time, because we're grasping at words and ideas to illustrate this thing, or experience or activity that just seems right now ineffable. So I don't know if there's a question in there, but would you like to sort of comment, I guess, on what you feel is for you, what's consciousness, or what's behind the, the I am not what I appear to be, what's behind the appearance, and or what's the more part for you, Erik?
Well, it's just what I've learned from others, and to me, the Abraham-Hicks teaching has been the clearest and most helpful. I find it to overlap, almost completely with science of mind and unity and some of these other things you've talked about, all of which I've dabbled in. But to me, what Abraham says is that we all have an inner being, and that inner being is non-physical. And so even when we talk about the quantum field or the quantum, the energy within the quantum mechanics, whatever, even all of that is physical. And so I kind of step back from the physical completely and think about it in terms of there's a non-physical me that's greater than the physical human me. That's why I say I can't fully understand or grasp it with my human mind, but that has to be true. And the other thing that's informed me a lot is just reading about near-death experiences and the commonalities of what people go through, and a little bit reincarnation too, stories where it just seems like it's pretty obvious there's something that lives on beyond this body, even based on those anecdotal stories. And Abraham has a good explanation for it, which is that we each consist of something. We don't even have to understand exactly what it is. It's just to know that we're all connected to that source, or we are all, spiritual beings, and that is the power that we all have. And the more that we can know that, even if we don't fully understand it, and live from that knowing, the better things seem to go.
So here's my question, and just also a comment. Like when we're talking about quantum physics and we're talking about the quantum field, when we've been talking about it in class, especially because of this book by Paul Levy, The Quantum Revelation, that we've been reading for the past few months, we're talking about potentiality. Just that there is no thing, that there's nothing that is actually an it, that everything is either possible, and that it's by our choosing and by focusing our attention that we then experience the actualized version, if you will, of that possibility. But that there's no actual, even what we call matter, that when you like go deep down and sort of like keep digging in and discover down to like the smallest sort of thing, there's just space. And in that space is this activity that is always ongoing. So that's what we're talking about. So it sort of different from what you said about, it being about physical stuff. But what I wanted to ask was that when you talk about Abraham-Hicks saying that there is, a non-physical being or me or something like that, does that mean, like in Science of Mind, and especially with Dr. James, he says, I am God. And in this class, we are, it's not that we are of source, that there is something in us, that we are it. We, each and every individual is the allness of whatever's going on, showing up as that individualized expression in that moment, which changes every single moment. So is that the same kind of thing that Abraham-Hicks talks about? Or is there like an ultimate kind of source that exists that we're all sort of drawing from, or how is it different?
I think there's an ultimate source we're all drawing from, that the source is not limited by its creation or individualizations. And so, if that's what you mean, I don't think that's what you mean, but it sounded like you were saying, is source energy only present in the physical individualizations of it that we see, or is there something more beyond that as well? Right? Is that kind of your question?
It's well, okay. It's I guess what I'm getting to is there, in what you believe and what you think, is there oneness? Is oneness, is that something that you subscribe to?
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that it's one energy that permeates everything. And yeah, I think I am God is kind of another way of saying,
yeah,
source energy in physical bodies is how he puts it.
Okay.
So source energy in a physical body, but we are first and foremost source energy, which is a non-physical spiritual thing.
Yeah.
That is behind everything. So that's why I say I think the overlap is basically 100% between the two ways of talking about it, just different ways of talking about it.
Right. Yep. And different ways will resonate with different people. I mean, Glenn, I have heard some Abraham-Hicks stuff, and I have read a couple of books. Glenn resonates so much more with Abraham-Hicks than I do. And I think, for me, it just comes down to the language sometimes, or just, this is what works for me. So Honey Bunch, do you want to chime in here with anything? Because I can kind of see you looking up to the right, thinking.
Yeah, I'm I'm on board with what's being said generally. So what struck me there was that like I recently came across this idea that the world of matter is it's a process, right? It's not static objects that happen to be moving. Like it's overall, it's a process that is just ongoing, unfolding, or whatever. But as you're speaking, I think something Eric, this idea came to me that the world of matter is like a language to describe the sort, like the source. It's an expression of this source that somehow is unfolding in these infinite ways through each being that exists, and through, we'll say through consciousness, but we don't really know how to measure all consciousness, because again, measuring is, we're back in the physical world of physical form again. But yeah, so it struck me that, yeah, maybe it's just a language so that we can anchor ourselves in something, in perception of this ordinarily infinitely, just, I mean, it's ridiculous trying to describe the source thing, because it's everything, obviously. So how do you limit that? There's no point, so even this idea then in the Quantum Revelation book and Paul Levy's thing about the wave and particle idea, it's a simplification of that overall process going on all the time. There's no time, etc. But it's all wave, and then you, through focusing on what you choose to experience, it becomes particle. So that just means it goes into temporary, it goes into an expression that can be grasped and then experienced, and then it flows again back into wave, right? So, but yeah, I just think that this is going to be an ongoing, never-ending thing. Like Abraham-Hicks says, you never get it right and you never get it done in terms of any experience. So even when you get a good fix,
not you never get it right, you can't get it wrong.
You can't get it wrong. Okay.
You get it done. You said you never get it right, which I know you probably
okay. All right. Yeah.
Sounds similar, but my memory is that you can't get it wrong, which is a little more positive than you never get it wrong.
That's true. Thank you for correcting that. Yeah. So, like, even if you just keep experiencing the same, you go through an experience of a relationship or a teaching that you're really into, it's still always different each time you do it, because you've been changed by your prior exposure to that desired experience. So yeah, anyway, but I just think that I like that idea that if you look at all of this as it's just language, because otherwise without language, it's all form. It goes back into we're just in this big blob that is exquisitely wonderful, but we lose the individual, the joy of experiencing from an individual standpoint. And I know that's something that, like, some of the communities I'm involved with, they don't like this idea that the oneness thing can get a little bit, it's a little bit sort of new agey woo-woo thing, where, like, you just lose yourself because you lose your identity, because you're giving yourself up and letting someone else sort of, or let everything happen to you. There's something that's a little bit weird about that, and I kind of agree with that concern that if you just float all the time, then there may be, I'm not sure what the benefit of the experience is, because you're just like, you're like a cloud. You're not experiencing being, the rain in the cloud that becomes the water that nourishes the field, that up comes the plants and all that. Like, there's something a little bit not nice about the new age kind of thing in general. But anyway, I'm not slamming new age. I'm just saying there's something amiss there. So I really appreciate the idea of like being an individual, experiencing what I experience, loving who I love, making my errors and mistakes, growing, learning from them, and then it all feeds back into this source idea.
So, Honey Bunch, what I'm not sure how to what the question is, but you've talked about this before, this sort of, apprehension about oneness. And I guess for me, I'll talk about, what it is for me. For me, knowing that and just like really, really having this land and sink in and really become a part of my life experience, that I am interconnected with everyone and everything, and not just with that there's no end to me and beginning of someone or something. The couple of chapters that we read in the book, not this past week but the week before, Eric, do you know the band The Smiths?
I do.
Okay, so the song "How Soon Is Now,"
Mhm.
which which when I wrote my thought paper about it and looked up when it was written, what was it, like 30 some almost 40 years ago or something like that? Jeez. Anyway, so it starts out, and I never actually looked at the lyrics because I'm someone who, or not because, I'm someone who hears music before I hear the lyrics, and I could hear and like listen to a song for ages and not know what they're singing about because I hear the music and not the words. Anyway, but when I would hear that song that opens up with "I am the sun and the air," then it's like, I'm pretty sure they're saying I am the son as in like, familial relation, and the heir as in heir to the, kingdom, throne, whatever sort of thing. But I would also hear I am the sun, like the sun in the sky, and I am the air, that is around me. And so when we were reading these chapters in the book where Levy was talking about how there is no end, like if you really sort of go, deep, 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 there's no end to me and the air around me, to the leaf on the trees, to the sun rays that are, coming down onto the trees that, then go back to the sun, that ultimately with all of this, not only are we sort of sharing, time and space and warmth and light with the sun, but ultimately we are the sun. And so when I heard that, when I read that, I just thought, that to me is so empowering. That to me is so, that idea of oneness, that when I look at, a tree, when I look at a mountain, when I feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, when I look at our cat, my daughter, when, sometimes it's a little more challenging when I'm looking like, at my actual laptop or something like that, but that all of it is one thing, and all of it is different interpretations and expressions of this one thing. To me, that oneness, that's very empowering and very activating, very humbling. And so when I was hearing this song again in my head, I am the sun, I am the air. Oh, Honey Bunch, help me out with the lyrics.
Of a shyness that is criminally vulgar.
Yeah, of the shyness that is criminally vulgar. I am the sun and the air of nothing in particular. All of a sudden, those lyrics meant something completely different to me, where, not was it about what Morrissey, and Johnny Marr were writing about sort of the just being dealt like a crappy hand by life, and no jobs and no money, and that England was just like a really sucky place to be at the time, but that ultimately throughout the song comes up this idea of that you can rise above this, you can rise above the hand that life has dealt you, and really there's no better time to sort of do it than now. But when I was listening to, I am the sun, I am the air of a shyness that is criminally vulgar, nothing, of no thing in particular, for me, it just kind of like all of a sudden the words turned into, I am everything. I am everything. I'm all of it right now. There's no end to me, no beginning to it. It is all intertwined, interconnected, intertwingled. And that shyness, that is criminally vulgar, it's almost like not opening up and not embracing and embodying that allness, that sun and air, that oneness, that essence that that we all are. And it's just like it's a crime almost not to do so. And that in the end, it's allness and it's no thingness, because in the end, like it's all energy, it's all consciousness. And so there was that complete sort of, which is not what they wrote, but that's like what the words ended up meaning to me, as I was reading this stuff in the book. And so for me, that's the power of oneness. That it just, it woke me up, whereas before that, it was just sort of like life is happening to me, life is happening to me. And yeah, there's some stuff that I can control, but ultimately, it is what it is, and that's it. But oneness, it's like I get to choose. I am choosing all the time. I get to choose what I put my attention on, how I spend my time, my energy, what I'm focusing on, and all of that, ends up being my life, and I'm creating all of it. Which is not to say that, like Eric mentioned earlier, that there isn't stuff that that I don't get caught up in. But it's a constant practice of just coming back to, this is what I choose. This is what I'm choosing, and I'm choosing from that allness, from that no thingness, because I can. Any thoughts? Anyone?
I don't know. You're I think we've backed Eric into a corner here. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
I'll lighten it up and just say that.
I don't know that I have anything to add. I think it's very well stated.
okay.
That in a pithy way, that was my generation's Purple Haze. Excuse me while I kiss this guy. It's like, was it this guy or this guy? Like, you just get down that rabbit hole for a while. No, I like, even like, so I'm part of a Unity church here in Victoria, and we've expanded into Vancouver Island. So we've actually, we've become more one, right? Because we've dissolved our church locally to embrace an island-wide community. So we're bringing other people in from other parts of the island to what was previously 3 Unity churches. So, and everyone's very well. Most people are very excited about it, and we're moving forward, and it's really cool to have this new community and meet people through Zoom, and eventually we'll be driving a little bit and meeting up in person. And like the word unity is it does mean oneness, but it's also, there's the aspect of it as well, but it's each of us recognizing our oneness, our community, right? And so it's both at the same time, which is great. And remembering that that's going on all the time is the trick, that it's just sort of, you practice and you practice and you practice and you get better, and you recognize that all that's going on is my own perception of my beliefs and my thoughts and my feelings, and definitely my expectations. What is unfolding is what I'm anticipating to happen based on what I believe about me. And for me, that's only my beliefs. So I don't get to do yours or yours, and I don't get to experience what it's like to be Morrissey today or 30 odd years ago when he wrote the song. So, but Yeah, it's I don't know why I went down this weird rabbit hole with this thing, but it's amazing. Like, because even in like in the film world, there are so many examples recently of trying to describe these ideas in film, which I think is very admirable that people do that. Like films like Interstellar, you're dealing with like time doesn't exist, and love is like the core of it all. Um, it's really cool that goes on, and the arts kind of keeps pushing out examples of let's try a different way of looking at this and seeing if we can see it from a different angle and show something a little bit more um, emotion or love or heart based than kind of straightforward rational, because you deal with time and space in a movie or TV show, I guess. Um, is that something you for example, that you've noticed in the last little while with these certain movies? I mean, it tends to be about creatures from other worlds or dimensions. That's starting to happen in film a little bit. But do you like that trend, or is it something you're?
It's not really my thing, to be honest. Like the kind of movies I love and the kind of things I like to write are more kind of simple, warm, kind of like inspiring, funny experiences. I think as I'm listening to you guys talk, I realize maybe why I didn't take the advanced consciousness class, even though a part of me is interested in those theories and those explorations. I think where I've come to is I guess what I like about Abraham-Hicks is that it's just very simple and playful and humorous and loving and warm. And it's like, just don't take all this too seriously and don't try to figure it all out. And there's a part of me that wants to figure everything out, but I can get very over intellectualized and over cerebral when I do that. And I don't know that it really serves me. And so I find myself pulling away a little bit from too much of the let's understand how the quantum mechanics actually is spirituality and how it takes form and all that stuff, which is, like I said, it's interesting, but I feel like Abraham would probably say you don't have to understand or figure it all out. Just live and be happy and joyful and loving to yourself and understand you're something bigger. That's why I was like, I don't know what I really am. I don't know how it all really works. I also realize I think I don't need to know. I
Mhm.
don't, and the only reason I want to explore things like quantum physics and stuff would be if it helps bolster my spiritual beliefs, because I see, oh, here's some evidence of it. But a lot of times when I delve into that stuff, it doesn't necessarily bolster my beliefs. When I hear about near-death experiences, that bolsters my belief that
Mhm.
there's something that lives beyond this body, which my reptile mind doesn't really even believe. But I want to believe that, and I do believe it because of that kind of evidence. But and maybe if I read some of those books, I would feel that same way. I'd be like inspired, but that's really it. I just want to be inspired and bolstered, and not have to think too hard.
And you know what? It's funny that you say that, Eric, because in this class experience from September, which has been just so altering and so impactful, really what we're kind of coming back around to is most of what you just said, which is that we don't have to understand how everything works. Even though we may be curious and wonder about it, we don't have to have all the answers. That it is so amazing and so powerful and empowering to live in the question and in the mystery. And that really, even though we continue to sort of grasp, for words and metaphors and parables and Zen cones and whatever ways, we can to kind of, describe and convey what it is that we're experiencing, what spirituality, what consciousness, what God means to us. Ultimately, it comes down to how we feel. And that, if it is something that feels joyful, that feels expansive, that feels loving, great. And, if it's not, well, then look at why it's not and, move on. So and it's funny, to like spend all that time and energy and focus and reading, these different books that we've been reading, but really focusing on the quantum revelation, to come back to it's okay not to know. And that, it's all about how I feel, and I can't necessarily convey in words how I feel, but it's energy, and that energy can be felt. And I mean, isn't what we talk about in science of mind, especially spiritual mind treatment, it's all about the passion and the energy and the faith and the conviction, with which we treat, that is movement of energy, that is shifting of consciousness, and that doesn't have to be done out loud with words or in the same room with anyone. So, you just brought it all home, Erik.
Glad.
Now, something else that we talk about a lot is creativity. And so I would love to find out from you how, excuse me, I guess how creativity, knowing that we are, sorry, excuse me, that we are creative beings, and everything that we're doing is creativity in action. Every thought, every word, every belief, every action, all of it, that it goes so much more beyond creativity as artistry. What does creativity mean to you? And how is creativity, showing up in your life?
Well, I think you're right that it goes beyond, artistic creativity, but because I'm a writer and I write every day, that is the main place where I see it. I'm a screenwriter. I'm teaching screenwriters, but I'm doing it myself. I sort of like split my time between the two, right? And so on my own work, it's been my single biggest teacher, really, in recent years about spirituality, in terms of the experimentation I do to try to have a good writing session, basically. And to me, if you really distill it down, a good writing session is one in which ideas flow that you really like in a fun, productive, prolific manner. And you're kind of writing them down and playing with them. That's a good writing session. There are some writing sessions where you're like in editing critical mode and you're like, this doesn't work, let me fix that. But most of the most important part of the process is I need an idea. I need an idea for a story, or I need an idea for the next scene, or I need an idea for who this character really is. You're just always needing more information, basically, more ideas for what's going to be in this thing you're writing. Mm-hmm. And learned over and over again that my analytical mind doesn't create ideas, and in fact gets in the way of ideas coming through. So what does that mean that they come through? They come from somewhere. They come from some higher intelligence, something within me. I'm not saying it's separate from me, but I'm saying a way of thinking seems to inhibit that flow. And to have a good writing session, I have to really shift out of my normal waking consciousness of getting things done and answering emails and having things I like and things I don't like and having a million opinions, and get into this playful, childlike, receptive, open, appreciative, loving mindset, loving toward myself, loving toward the crap I wrote yesterday as I'm rereading it that I might want to think of as crap. But the more I can love it and accept it, the more it's like, oh, and then there could be this, and then there could be this. Things just show up in my mind like, oh, this. But there's plenty of writing sessions where that never happens because I never get into that consciousness. So it affirms for me what, again, the Abraham-Hicks teaching, the way they talk about it is it's like there's this emotional scale, and you can sort of climb up the emotional scale, and doing it like emotion by emotion can sometimes be better than trying to leap all the way to the top from the bottom, right? And so when you're in the really high level emotional scale, everything feels so good. You're in bliss. And so I work myself into that state as best as I can. I do it for other reasons throughout the day, but I mainly do it when it's time to write, because I know I'll have a miserable session and I'll hate myself the rest of the day because nothing came. I don't. And that's the way to be productive, is to get out of the productive mindset, ironically, and get into that flow mindset or heart set, as Michael Beckwith might say, where I'm not trying to make something happen. I'm not trying to figure out the next step of something. I'm relaxing and allowing and trusting that within me somewhere are great ideas. I just can't see them yet. but they tend to flow when I'm in that state. Oh, you're muted, Lassia.
Lass, you're muted.
Sorry, I had to clear my throat again. I really like that. Get out of the productive mindset and get into the flow mindset. That, yeah, I like that. Just to be receptive, and you keep bringing up playful and loving and receptive, and I just love that those, you know, are sprinkled in there as well, because it feels good. It feels good, and just from my own personal experience of now writing my first book, which is my final assignment for this class. I'm now in a stage where I'm going back and I'm reading everything I wrote, because what I did for a couple of months was I would just sit down every day, and in the morning, and I would just write for half an hour. That was my commitment. And whether it was one sentence or 5 pages, then you know, I would just write, sort of stream of consciousness. I had my book outline there, and I would just sort of look, and whatever came to mind, I would just start writing and not read anything that I had written previously. And so now I'm going back and reading stuff, and it's so neat, because some of it I don't remember. Some of it has, you know, sort of like inspiring, oh, right, then this comes in, and now it's a different experience, and sort of, I guess, a different stage of this writing for me, because now it's kind of like, okay, out of all this that I kind of, you know, just like let flow, how do I bring it all together into one, you know, cohesive, flowing, kind of beginning to end piece that I can then submit as my manuscript. So there's a for me right now, there's a different this is a different experience in this stage, and it's almost like, you know, in that beginning stage where I was just writing, it was sort of very free flowing. And there were days where I'd sit down and I'm like, you know, nothing's really coming, so I just start writing. But it was about the writing and just kind of letting it come and letting it out, and getting it onto the page, so to speak. And now to be in sort of this organizational, you know, stage of it, it's different, and sometimes that feels a little daunting to take all of this material and put it together. And so for me, the work is to not get caught up in the daunting, you know, and the potential overwhelm of it. That it's just, you know, I have, you know, this page or these pages right in front of me, and I can always chunk it down, and I don't have to go and put it all together into finished manuscript in this one session. That there still is, you know, like you say, flow, rather than focusing, you know, just only on sort of the productivity aspect. So that's a great nugget there. Thank you, Erik.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a ironic thing, because I'm more productive when I'm not trying to be productive. The flow state leads to productivity. It's not that productivity isn't the ultimate goal. It's that having a mindset of, okay, I need to be productive, is anathema to good creative results flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, have to, what you're saying sort of a bit is, when we say I have to do this, if you replace it with sort of, I get to do this, you know, if you can get yourself into that mindset of, as you said, the, you know, the emotional scale, like finding something to be joyful about, or something gratitude, to just get you into a lighter feeling tone, that just, you know, it lifts you up, right? So that's pretty cool. The one book that you introduced me to through another podcast was the Stephen Pressfield War of Art book, and I listened to it on audiobook. So I bought the book, and I'm going to read it because it's going to be a different experience. But his whole thing about resistance, like that's like a whole meditation on kind of what we're talking about, but the resistance is like manifested into this beast that finds, like, it's got its claws into you every time you second guess yourself from the earliest times in your life you can remember. And for some reason, it's just got this kind of hold on you, but it only continues if you allow it to. So there's all these ways of looking at it in the book that I think that are really helpful. I think to any writer, any creator, just based on one listening and some of the things you outlined in your conversations previously. But yeah, that's that kind of stuff. Any tool that can get you into the creative state where it feels like play as a child, and understand and experiences play rather than a task that has to be done. You know, what is it that last year during the conversation we had, to do, was it do to get, or
Oh yeah. Do to get versus experience. No, sorry.
express to
Express and receive.
and receive? Yeah, which was Rick Tamlin's
Mm.
kind of take on it, right? It's just like, well, there's at least two different ways to do this. So find the way that is easier. Even if, I mean, it looks like you're going in the wrong direction. Like you said, you have to get certain things done, but that is like the death knell of, any productivity. Or it's just like, even that word productivity, it's like, well, now it just conjures up like Karl Marx, and it's kind of like the means of production, and like, I'm being edited here and this kind of thing. Well, no, you're doing what you love. So like get into the loving thing first, and then just be there for a while, and you'll enjoy the experience no matter what comes out of it, right?
Yeah. Express to receive. I'm going to keep that. Rick's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
I love him.
Heidi, when you said something of, that reminded me, I think, of something that you said before about playfulness and about kids playing. Like when little kids, when they play, they're not, thinking about, am I playing correctly? Am I playing right? I mean, they just play. They just, allow their imagination and creativity to just flow through and guide them and spend hours and hours. I mean, how many times did we have one daughter together, Eric, Milana. She's 16, almost 17. And when she was younger, she she would process her day, at school, in her room with a little class. And sometimes that class would be made up of just tissues that she'd pulled out of a tissue box and lined up in a circle. And then she'd have a storybook, and she'd be, talking, telling the story to just these tissues, or, a bunch of Playmobiles, or, whatever she had in her room that was at hand that could represent, students or a crowd or a collective of some kind. And she would read the story, or then she would stand in front of her closet or a wall or something, sort of like she was at a blackboard, and just, be the teacher and process her day and relay, to like her little audience of tissues or whatever it was, what had happened, and she had her little class that she was going on, and it, like, she could do that for hours. And, like, she wasn't thinking, am I getting it done? Am I, like, completing it on time? Not that to say that deadlines aren't important, but she wasn't thinking in terms of like, I've got to get it done this way, it just, within this box and these parameters, sort of thing. It just, she was in the flow, and it was, it was so neat to watch. And you almost kind of, didn't want to watch it, because it was almost this just like very personal, intimate, private, experience that she was having. But like, she had a glass door, and so we could kind of like see, through a little bit of the glass door. And it was just fascinating to me, because that was her world for however long it was going on. Just pure imagination at work. It was amazing. And you have, how many kids do you have, Eric?
Four.
4. And how are they? They're all teens or older?
Older. I have 3 from my previous marriage, and Margaret, my wife, has 1 from a previous marriage. So we
Okay.
don't have any together. And their age range is 20. Oldest just turned 27, 21 to 27.
Okay. All right. And so, okay. So then, so, I mean, I guess you don't even have to think, back to like when they were little or whatever, but as a parent, like what's your sort of, how do you, or no, I guess think back to like when they were little. What's your experience of remembering your kids playing and just kind of being in the zone? And is that something that the, that we lose as adults and try to get back, or you
Yeah,
know
for sure. I think we definitely lose it. Yeah, I mean, we get trained into, I did anyway, and you got to be productive.
yeah,
And then there are goals that you want to achieve. And in play, there's not really a goal. You're just in the experience,
yeah,
and there's no productivity.
yeah. So then, okay, so you've talked about writing and a little bit, and I know that your wife Margaret is a singer songwriter and just a powerhouse of imagination and creativity and artistry in action. And I have seen you play the keyboards, accompanying. So is music also a big part of your life?
Well, I'm very much a kind of amateur hobbyist with music, whereas she's a professional. She's been
Yeah.
a singer-songwriter, performer for 30 some years. It's kind of who she is. Music was always my kind of hobby.
Hmm.
And for years I didn't play at all, but recently I picked it up again in recent years and have taken lessons in different styles and got to the point where I could accompany her, on things if I practiced long enough, and have done a
Yeah.
few fill-in gigs like at the center where I was on keyboards. Um, and so, yeah, music was always like a big interest, but um, I considered studying it in college, but then I turned to studying film instead, and screenwriting ultimately, and music took a back seat.
So what was that? Was there a specific sort of inspiration or like a tipping point, when it came to like film over music for you? How did you end up going, with film versus music?
It's a good question. Thinking back to my like 18, 19-year-old self, I remember taking a sight singing and dictation class, which I didn't enjoy, but that's probably not the main reason. I don't know. I think just film appealed more. I think I always had the being a narrative writer, writing stories as opposed to just playing or writing music or songs. I think at the end of the day, when I had to really look at it, I was like, I'm more inspired to create stories and characters than just musical expression. I shouldn't say just, but it's just like a different, to me, music. I mean, as a filmmaker, music becomes part of your film, whether you write it or someone else does. And so that's cool. But to be like a songwriter, composer, or performer somehow didn't. Yeah, it's a good question to watch. The best I could give. It was always kind of like, do I want to be like a fiction writer? Do I want to be like make movies? Do I want to do music? And um, yeah, the idea of story and character just seemed richer to me, uh,
Hmm.
somehow. Longer form pieces with characters, and I was inspired. I mean, I was inspired by music, also by movies and books and stories that made me go, "Wow, I wish I could do that," or I could write things that would have that effect on other people, like this thing had on me.
And so the trajectory that you have taken and that life has sort of taken you on, the some of the stuff that you talk about in your bio about the work that you did on Band of Brothers and From the Earth to the Moon, working with Tom Hanks, the pitches to the broadcast networks, Universal, HBO, TNT, and even the teaching that you do, is all of that stuff that you foresaw, that you envisioned for yourself, or has it just been an organic process that has unfolded as you have just allowed, for this flow to be in the flow of this creativity?
The first one. I mean, it was, I was just a typical kid that wanted to make it in the entertainment business,
Hmm.
moved out to Hollywood from Ohio, and had a systematic approach, not knowing how it would pay off, certainly not knowing the specifics of those projects and experiences, but knowing that I wanted to become a professional screenwriter, and so taking sort of logical steps in that direction. The spirituality came because in college, I went through kind of crisis of like, who am I kind of thing, and turned into a bit of a spiritual seeker, sort of through therapy when things were really not going well. And then once I was like working in Hollywood, it became a big I use the science of mind a lot to get myself into the mindset of I can succeed at this, I can do this. There's no reason why I can't have the life I want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it was a tool to try to make it in Hollywood, almost more than anything else. And it still is in a way, because I still have the same dreams, I still have the same aspirations. My career has, like most people's, has up and down and sideways in different directions. And eventually, I started teaching and stuff. But the dream is always the same, which is to, make stuff I love that millions of people love, make stories, make
Mm-hmm.
films or TV shows. And Science of Mind was a philosophy that helped me to deal with the confidence and insecurity issues that people tend to have trying to make it in a very competitive field. So that was like always the original main reason why I found it appealing. I can make my life better, get what I want. And of course, the more you study it, the more there's deeper other aspects to it. And the whole irony of, oh, I'm going to be more productive if I don't try to be productive. I'm going to get what I want if I'm not trying to get what I want, if I'm expressing and receiving instead of doing to get, and all that, learning along the way.
So
There,
you
there's
are,
an
okay, go ahead.
there's an aspect of with the Abraham. Um, I know the material more listening to the kind of whatever the
Workshops.
workshops on the cruises, and I guess whatever recently, um, but when the thing comes up of saying where she says, "Oh, um, the example is given, and then say, well, but Abraham, that sounds so selfish." And I say, yes, it is, and that's a good thing, because there's this aspect of like, I'm enjoying being me. Thank you. That's okay. I don't need to um, expand out into this other like there's this moral framework that is deliberately avoided, I think, and I really am intrigued by that, because it's like you really have to like dive into your own experience in order to get the most out of it, and sometimes it appears from this perspective of others that you're like, who, this person's being an asshole, like why are they doing that or saying that? But sometimes you need to be able to, for example, like walk away from a person who is behaving in a way that is not helping them at all, and you're not going to be able to um, do much in terms of extracting them, because they're going to still be in their own wavelength of whatever it is they're going through. So not getting attached to that is actually the best thing. It's just like, go and be joyful and peaceful on your own and enjoy your life. And you will have your ups and downs, and you may appear to others, that you're in distress or whatever, but like, you really truly have to go within in order to just be, well, I lost the plot there, but it's easier to just settle into the idea that I am who I am, and I it may appear as like happenstance, like you were saying, as a younger person, it just all seems to unfold sort of accidentally maybe, but really when you get to the studying of it, it's like, well, no, certain obstacles came up because of whatever my first 2 decades of experience were, and who my parents were, and what my peers were doing and saying, and so I just absorbed all these beliefs. So I thought that was my lot in life, but at least you kind of went on this other track of saying, I want to do this, and I just don't know whether I want to do this version of it or this version or this version. But I'm really enjoying the book, by the way, the idea that I'm sure you'll talk about in a second, but there's a certain counterintuitive aspect to it in terms of the way the book unfolds for me. But it does make sense overall. But like, it's a maybe you can explain this clearer than I can, but this idea that in a movie, for example, there's all of these obstacles, and the characters have to endure certain things, and like, it's all horrible really until the end, right? Whereas in life, it's like we tend to just think, I want it easy. I just want an easy life. I want to be left alone. everything's good. We're all in love with each other or whatever. But yet when we go to be entertained, we want the opposite of it. We want this kind of person to be dragged through hell, and we want the hero's journey, and we want all these different ways of expressing. What's Lassie doing there? She's looking at me funny.
Talking.
So is that something you want to just quickly, if you go over this idea that you have, which is an amazing concept. I really like it, the acronym.
Oh yeah. I'll hold up the book for anyone who's watching visual to get a little visual of it. It's called The Idea, the 7 Elements of a Viable Story for Screen, Stage, or Fiction. Really the basic premise is that what I've learned in my career as both a writer and as someone who like coaches writers, teaches writing, is that writers tend to jump into writing the script before the idea is really solid and worthy to be written, and that there are teachable aspects to what makes an idea that's worth spending months and years writing, especially in the world of screenplays or TV pilots, also commercial fiction, stage, which is why I mentioned that. And so I've spent a lot of time coming up with, well, what are the elements that a good idea needs to have? I know one when I see when I can tell people, here's what I think isn't working, can I put it in a format that is teachable? And so I came up with an acronym of PROBLEM, because every story, like you said, is about a problem that needs to be solved. Someone's dragged through hell, and that problem, PROBLEM, becomes the acronym for these 7 elements. So it's punishing, relatable, original, believable, life-altering, entertaining, and meaningful. And so I have 7 chapters, one on each of those, that goes deep into what does that mean? How do you do that? What are the pitfalls? Why is it important? And for people that are sports fans, I think that's one of the easiest analogies. When you're watching, let's say, a movie, the entertainment experience of that is not that different from watching a great game, like a championship game where your team, it means everything that they win. What's the most entertaining version of that championship game? Is it one where they're ahead by 20 the whole time, if it's basketball, let's say, or football? Or is it the one where they're behind and struggling and they have to come from behind at the end for a buzzer beater, let's say in basketball, to win the game? That's obviously the more exciting version. And it's kind of the same with stories. We want to have that entertainment experience that involves the heroes, the people we're following, having difficulty and only winning in the end, if at all.
Yeah. And the other thing, this is the part I'm on the audiobook. As an example, you gave of the 2 different sort of pitch or log line ideas when you're talking about the describing the Finding Nemo. Sort of how would you give those 2 general descriptions, and what sounds more to a person who's going to read it and potentially produce the story into a cinematic experience? Which of those 2 sounds more appealing? Do you have that on hand, or do you have it in your head? Or?
Yeah, so this is about internal stakes. So there's 2 versions of like a log line, or which is like a 1-sentence pitch of a movie, 1 or 2. One is, a clownfish who is overly protective of his son must learn to let go and trust him as he sends him out in the big scary world of growing up in the ocean. So that focuses on the internal journey of learning to let go and trust, which is part of that movie, but not the main part that draws people in. So the log line that focuses on the external problem is this one. When a clownfish's son is taken by a man on a fishing boat, the father embarks on an adventure through the ocean with few clues to try to find him. Meanwhile, the son tries to plot escape from the dental office aquarium he's found himself in, which looks like a death sentence. So that focuses on the external difficulties that are really fun to watch. They're like that sports game where, oh my God, are they going to win or not? Now, within all that, you have the internal journey of the father learning to let go and trust, and the son learning to maybe listen to his father a little more, but also whatever. They reconcile some internal stuff, but sometimes screenwriters tend to be like writing a story that's only about internal issues, and they pitch it about the internal issues, and people get bored with, okay, someone has to learn to whatever, but what's the story? The story is the exciting difficulty in the outer world of experience.
Yeah, sorry, Lasse, just one more thing.
Oh, so that's okay.
When I was listening to that, I thought the first one, like I was kind of casually listening, and I had to go back and listen to it. And the third time I went, oh, I get it now. Because the first time I thought, yeah, I'm Albert Brooks. I'm this guy. I feel that, as a parent, I know what that feels like and whatever. and then the other descriptions finally like dropped, like, no, okay, if people don't, if you have, do not show up, and they're not certainly entertaining for other people. I mean, they may be for sadists, I guess, but it's really, I love that distinction, because you're just nuancing it into, hey, do you want to have this thing sold? Do you want to have this shared and experienced? So this is how you would do it, or this is how you would look at it and frame it, I guess. So anyway, I really enjoy it. So
Thank you. Yeah, that inner stuff makes it meaningful and deep and rich and worthwhile and better. I'm not saying take it out. It's just, it can't be the main only event.
yeah.
I really like that. And I haven't listened to or read the book yet, but I'm going to, especially as you're talking about some of the stuff that's in there. So I really, really like the way that you just kind of, not so much well, I guess it was a distinction of the, the inner and the external, because when you read the external one, the log line, it was like, oh my God, I totally want to see that. And I think it goes back to something that you just said a few minutes ago, Honey Bunch, where you were talking about people saying, I want it easy. And I, think that there maybe is another take on that, where people, they may say that, but underneath, really, they believe life is hard. And so when they, see these movies and they're taken into these stories, they get to see the R relatable, they can relate. And it's like, that's me, I'm Albert Brooks, just like you said, or I'm Ted Lasso. I don't know. Did you watch Ted Lasso? Like, oh my God, I just kept thinking about that as you were talking about, the team winning or not winning, and, what's going to happen. And just like, the entire problem acronym, that entire series. And now just can't wait until July 23rd when it shows up on Apple TV season 2. But that even though we say that I want it easy and I want to be in the flow and whatever, that for many there is still that underlying belief of life is hard and I can't, or I'm not worthy, or it could never happen for me, or whatever. So to be drawn into these stories and be able to relate to the main character who is overcoming these obstacles and having a life-altering experience, and having an interesting time of it. I mean, even the movie we watched yesterday, Spencer Confidential, is it? Yeah. Where the main character, was just like, he wanted to do something good, but was continually coming up against obstacle, and being beaten up, like metaphorically and physically, constantly. It was entertaining to watch as well. And in the end, like, good comes out of it. And then, they leave you with, clearly there's, another one that could come with, the next problem that shows up, kind of thing. So I think that, it's also, there's that aspect, it's not always like, I want it easy, but, I want to be entertained in this way. It's that, yeah, I want it easy, but really, do I believe it? And here's, an example that I can relate to that sort of makes me go, yes, I think I can. If they can do it, in a Pixar movie, then by golly, I can do it in my own life, kind of thing. So I mean, I think that's why a lot of those Pixar movies work, right? Like they speak to something, deep inside of us, and do everything, address this entire acronym problem that Erik just talked about, which is amazing. What's the M? I forget what the M was.
Meaningful.
Meaningful. Yes. Yeah. That is so fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay.
Who's next?
You look like you're about to say something.
No, but you said this is also going to be a course you're doing. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up an e-course that people will take with the same name as the book, that's based on the book, with a series of video lessons from me, breaking down each of the 7 chapters into 5 lessons, where there's activities where I'm really kind of asking them to take their own idea for something through a series of questions to try to make sure that they're actually achieving. Because it's easy to say, oh yeah, it needs to be punishing. It's harder to achieve it than it looks. And I work with people one-on-one all the time as a coach, but this is a way people can, have a more of an ongoing instruction. So that'll be out sometime in June.
Cool.
And is it when you, in this e-course, is it, excuse me, just the recorded things, or is there going to be any kind of, online platform or access to you, live questions, that kind of stuff?
So good question. Yeah. So it's a series of videos, like 40 some videos, each of which has a lesson that refers you to a workbook, which is like 100+ page Google Doc, because you can add stuff to it as you answer and work through activities. And then in addition to that, there will be a level of the class where you get a group coaching component, where a monthly group call with me, where people can ask questions or pitch ideas and get my feedback live in front of other students, and get a recording of it later if they want.
That's good.
I feel like Glenn might be one of your might be in that class. Okay, so the idea, the 7 elements of a viable story for screen, stage, or fiction. So if, like, right now, the book that I'm writing is more of a memoir. It's 3 very personal, substantial stories that have something to do, basically me making up me, being sort of the crux of who I was to a certain point in my life, and then what I learned and sort of, kind of grew into as a result. And so here you're talking about screen, stage, or fiction. So this is telling a story. This is telling it just fiction, or is
Well, it's primarily fiction and commercial fiction, but
Okay.
but nonfiction tends to sell the best and be the most popular when it's nonfiction that reads like a story, that reads like a
Yeah.
novel, that has the same elements of story. But the nonfiction, the true story of something, doesn't often have these elements that we writers impose when we're writing something fictional. But there's only so much imposing you can do on real life. So real lives that have these natural story elements in them tend to make for the most popular types of memoirs. So I do coach people doing that sometimes, but depending on what your focus is and reason, it may or may not be able to conform to a lot of those elements.
Yeah. So who are the people who are going to end up taking your course, aside from Glenn?
Well, it's people that are people that are writers, that are writers at all levels, especially screenwriters and fiction writers. There are thousands, tens of thousands of aspiring writers out there that haven't broken in yet. My clients range from people, it's the first time they ever tried to write something creative, to people that have sold screenplays and have big managers and agents and careers at it, and are having their movies get produced, or even directing their movies. So it's it's at any level of, I'm grapple with coming up with my next story, my next book, my next screenplay, my next TV series idea, and I want to make sure it's good and has the best chance of being successful.
And the stuff that you have in the book, that you are talking about in your course, is this the same kind of stuff that you teach at UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, I have a course at UCLA Extension that I haven't taught in a while, only for my own reasons, for the time and money components of doing it. But that was a course on adapting true stories for film. And then at National University, I teach TV writing in their MFA screenwriting program, which is going to be ending soon, but I have been teaching there for about 10 years. The program is going to be ending. But so I teach the TV writing track. So I teach a lot of stuff about TV writing. But yeah, these elements that are in the book are definitely overlap greatly with the stuff I'm teaching at those places.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Amazing. Honey Bunch, do you have anything else?
Have you switched to Zoom teaching then during this time, or?
I was always, the National University program, which is the one that I'm still teaching in, has always been a remote online program. It's a low residency program where they have 2-week residency in LA, but they're all over the country. So those were already done through an online form, not Zoom, but a online form. And then the stuff I do one-on-one with people has always just been emails and recorded phone calls anyway. So that hasn't changed.
Yeah, I just,
I don't teach in person. I mean, I could, but I actually like the freedom of not having to. At one point, I was thinking of like putting in my CV at USC Film School, because they're like the top film school in the country, and I knew someone there. But then when I heard about what it would pay and what it would take and what would be involved and the commute involved, I was like, why is that better than the life I have now? I mean, you have the top students who had to get into USC and had to be really great, have a lot of potential. That's the one appealing factor. But there are offsetting negatives as well to that, I think, as a teacher. So I've decided I like just being able to do it from my own home. Although you miss the interpersonal stuff in a room, there is something to that I don't get, but I'm okay with it.
Maybe you just have to look at that movie adaptation and imagine yourself as Robert McKee every once in a while. Like, I don't need that. No.
Right.
It's wow. Okay, so and the other thing the way I was introduced to you, I mean, last year it's Global Truth Center, but your website, the blog, the Flying Wrestler.
Yeah.
.com, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an excellent resource too, because you do have that 10-day writing tip thing.
10 key principles. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is actually what I thought, because I guess I didn't read the email that said, the idea is going to be the course, but like I thought that was going to be a course of just, you're going to expand that. But even that on its own, those 10 sort of mini lessons, I guess you'd call them, are really worthwhile. So
thank you.
We'll put that in the description, obviously. But so what, so are you still writing though? Like in terms of you have a long-term project on the go that you keep dipping in and out of, or?
Yeah, I split my time between my teaching, consulting, coursework, whatever, with my own writing projects. So it's about half time on each. So these days I've been writing like kind of micro budget feature film, indie film comedies with the eye toward, raising the financing and making one, directing one. I did a short a couple of years ago, 22-minute short that I wrote and directed and took around to film festivals and really loved directing, which I never really did professionally. So, I have a bunch of scripts. I have some TV pilots too, but I have like different feature film screenplays. I'm kind of like generating. Actually, Stephen Pressfield, who wrote The War of Art, somewhere he said something about writing a script in 6 months or 2 a year, a script or a project. And I was like, that's what I want to do from now on. So I've been generating every year basically two finished scripts for the last 5 years. And, maybe I'll make one this year. We'll see. But they're also writing gigs sometimes that my way that I consider. There's one circling right now that I might do, but for the most part, I'm doing my own stuff, trying to make my own stuff.
And have you ever done ghostwriting? No, because that's more sort of biography type stuff, right?
I think that's the main place where I hear about it. Yeah, in book writing. I mean, there are screenwriters that do like uncredited punch-ups and polishes on like studio movies and stuff, which you have to be very A-list to be hired to do that. Even if I was asked to do it, I don't know if that'd be something I would love doing. I might, it's high paying, but no.
Yeah, when you have someone like Tarantino doing that, you just notice a certain type of film, and then you can tell he's been involved because someone's head is, falling off or whatever. So. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm circling back into some other things here, but Glacia?
Yeah, no, I just, thinking that this has been a great conversation, and I love hearing more about the writing and the creativity sort of like in that area of your life, because that is so much of what your life is all about. So Honey Bunch, thank you for asking all those questions. And I just keep looking at this problem acronym, thinking that is brilliant, and it just is really making me think of, even though I'm not writing a piece of fiction, that there's almost everything I think is in there. And so now I'm going to, as I'm gathering my content, that I've sort of like allowed to flow through for a couple of months, and I'm organizing it all, just keep it sort of, in my purview as my story, unfolds, because years ago, it would have been a how-to book, or a step-by-step or more of a program kind of thing. But then what I realized over the last couple of years is the books that I really like to read and the ones that draw me in are the ones that are read more like a story, and where it just, within the story there are little nuggets or, little tiny anecdotes or something like that speak personally to me, and that sort of like, you don't have to be told step by step, do this, then this, then this, then this, then this, and then you will, just by reading and being able to relate to what someone else has gone through, and sort of, see myself in that's a lot more meaningful, or has been a lot more meaningful for me, in the last few years than a step by step program per se. So that changed for me and I just thought, thinking about what's been going on and how far I've come, and where I am today versus where I was, 3, 5, 10, 40 years ago. These are the three main stories that have really, really impacted, my life experience and helped to shape, who I have become today. And being in this class for this past, almost a year has been incredibly impactful as well, and has ended up shaping the unfoldment of this book and this book writing experience, and just opened the door to keep it, open to like everything that's coming next. So yeah, super, super cool experience for sure. Um, okay, Glenn, you said you were circling back. Is there anything
No,
else that you want to ask or add, or?
I don't want to go down too deep of a hole. So
Okay. All right. Well, okay. So, it's been about an hour and a half or so. So this is probably a good place to end for today. But before we do, we're going to move into our super rapid fire question round, which Glenn is going to lead. And Erik, all you have to do is just relax. You're going to get a minute in which Glenn is going to ask you a bunch of questions, and we just want you to answer off the top of your head, no deep thought or anything. And it's just a fun way to get to know you a little bit better. So, Honey Bunch, let me know when you are ready.
alrighty.
Ready and go.
Okay, who is your favorite novelist?
J.D. Salinger.
Okay, which do you prefer, jazz or hip hop?
Jazz.
Meditation or yoga?
Meditation.
The Wright brothers or the right stuff?
The Wright brothers.
Movies or television?
Movies.
The Big Chill or the Big Sleep?
The Big Chill.
Kombucha or coffee?
Coffee.
Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Directed by Alan Smithy or directed by Ed Wood?
Directed by Alan Smithy.
Oh. Teaching or learning? Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Naps or massages?
Massages.
Ding, 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 ding. All right. Thank you, Erik. Glenn, tell Erik what he's won.
Okay, we're going to circle back to this. There's that word again, that phrase. Talking about obstacles and whatever. In the introduction to one of my very, very favorite books, The Nature of Personal Reality, the Seth book. If you like Abraham, look it up. Very short part here. It is talking about negative aspects of your experience. It said, even obstacles have a reason for being. If they are your own, then it is up to you to recognize them and discover the circumstances behind their existence. Your conscious thoughts can be great clues in uncovering such obstructions. You are not nearly as familiar with your own thoughts as you may imagine. They can escape from you like water through your fingers, carrying with them vital nutrients that spread across the landscape of your psyche, and all too often carrying sludge and mud that clog up the channels of experience and creativity. What exists physically exists first in thought and feeling. There is no other rule. As soon as you recognize this fact, you can begin at once to alter those conditions that cause you dismay or dissatisfaction. Okay. I think that ties it up to what we were talking about before. Yeah.
That's cool.
Have you read Seth books? Or
I don't know if I ever read a complete Seth book, but I definitely read some Seth stuff a long time ago, and I know that they were a big influence on Jerry and Esther Hicks, led them on the journey to ultimately finding the handling of Abraham that she does.
Yeah.
Anyway, can you just hold up that book, please, and be clear about which one it is for the folks who are watching and listening?
I was reading off my phone, but this is the very old copy. Is Jane Roberts, Nature of Personal Reality, Prentice.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So, Erik, you have talked about your book. You have talked about the e-course that is coming up. For people who want to find out more or get in touch with you for whatever reason, what is the best place for them to, or what is the best way for them to do so?
Just probably my website, which is called flyingwrestler.com, which has info about the book and the course and other stuff, blog posts, etc.
Okay. Amazing. All right. Thank you. Erik, thank you so much for being on our show today. Thank you for this amazing conversation. Just everything that has come up. I am really looking forward to listening to and reading your book, and really appreciate some of the stuff that's come up, including this acronym for problem, and to get out of the productive mindset and get into the flow mindset. So, I mean, there was other stuff too, but those are the two things that kind of, stand out for me. So thank you. Thank you, Honey Bunch, for once again co-steering the show, the ship. And thank you to everyone who tuned in, who watched, who listened, however it is that you're engaging with us. We so value and appreciate your time, your presence. So let us know what you think. Like, subscribe, leave a comment wherever you can. And we will be back soon with another episode of Who Do You Think You Are? My name is Lasya. Glenn Sheridan has been my host. Our guest today has been Erik Bork. Bye for now.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This has been an episode of Who Do You Think You Are? An exploration into how our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings create our reality. My name is Lasya Cahoot, and I have been your host. My co-host has been Glenn Sheridan. We'd like to thank the following for helping make this podcast a reality. Today's special guest, Erik Bork. Music, Vasco Lorenco, copyright 123rf.com. Background illustration, Sakma Staircase, copyright 123rf.com. For more information on this podcast and our Lasya Cahoot Soul Excavator, please visit www.lasyacahoot.com. If you like what you've heard, please like, subscribe, and let us know by leaving a comment. Thanks for tuning into Who Do You Think You Are?